All right, so welcome, Tamara. It's wonderful to have you here on our Blueprints for Success. I'm absolutely thrilled. You're a product owner. Before we start with our actual interview, I want to know a little bit about your career. You're a product owner at Children International, which is really fascinating. Could you tell me a little bit more about Children International, please?
Thank you. I'm delighted to be here. Thank you for the invitation. Children International is a secular humanitarian nonprofit, and our mission is to serve children within the scope of our agencies. We do that by offering them health access, health services, by helping to keep them educated and on grade level. As they get older, offering financial literacy and other programs to help them become well adjusted young adults. And then later, as they become teenagers and adults, we help them to receive training so that they can find gainful employment within their communities that is long lasting and brings income to their local communities. So it's
That's awesome.
been my ikigai moment. It's the perfect confluence of both my talent and my passions helping kids.
That really is amazing. And I know we spoke a little bit earlier, and I said it's just so wonderful to have a business that has such a great purpose. It really is. But you not only a one-trick pony, you've also got some other options that you're looking at. So you're also a membership chair of the Kansas City Women in Technology. Could you maybe tell me a little bit more about that as well?
Yes, Kansas City Women in Technology was founded by a software developer and now director of software development and keynote speaker, Jennifer Wadella. She began the organization around 2013, 2014, when she found herself basically alone in the professional culture, surrounded by male developers, and in that time, found herself subject to a lot of insensitivity, to put it mildly. We've all heard about bro culture and how misogynistic sometimes software development can be. It is a very difficult place for women to find their footing. In the United States, at least, most women who actually start in a software career end up leaving it within the first couple of years. So we have significantly fewer women represented in the software development ranks. Her goal was to start an organization to support women in technology. And while that began as an effort to train women to become developers, it has expanded to be a very close knit community of professional women in technology who support one another and lift one another up. That does involve training, it involves networking, opportunities to speak, and more. And I began as a member in my own journey and have stayed because I am so passionate about the mission. That's
That's
my
needed,
moonlighting job.
right? Yeah. All right. So maybe if you can give us a little bit about you. So who, what motivates you? What's your background? How did you get into the industries? So just a little bit more around who you are.
I am originally from a little town in the very middle of Missouri, in the middle of the United States, completely landlocked. I came to Kansas City, Missouri with my husband very early in our marriage and began my career in financial services. It was about 2002, and I at that time I became a junior business analyst with my MBA, fresh out of my MBA program at that point. And at that time, the International Institute of Business Analysis, IIBA, was a brand new professional development organization. And I didn't really know at that time if it was going to be a going concern or if it was going to be around for long, because that was about the same time that Agile was born. So, and my career parallels those two movements. I continued at a large financial services company for a very long time. It turns out it was too long. And when my career started to become stagnant, I went in search of professional development opportunities. By that time, IIBA was now over 10 years old. I found Kansas City Women in Technology, and I found myself at a crossroads. I could go the business path or I could go the developer path. And I explored both. And to cut to the end of the story, I decided to stick with what I knew and what I do well at, and that is business analysis and project management and product management eventually. And here we are today.
And have you found that working in different industries changed your role at all? So in other words, from going from finance to children, do you still do the same things as a business analyst? What is the difference, do you think?
That is the amazing
I know
part
you're a
about
product
it.
owner now, but
It
I'm just
it is
curious.
true. My title has changed, but the functions of my role have largely remained the same. I still must ask questions. I still have to discern, is this the right course of action at the right time and help the team to achieve the goal? Those
Mm,
things haven't changed and they've been very transferable. The details are different. But
yeah.
ironically, you can in the United States in the financial services sector, that is a very highly regulated, very rule heavy sector. And when something goes wrong, it goes and it goes really wrong, it has devastating effects on the economy. In children, in nonprofit, we're striving for nothing less than saving the world.
Mm,
But we've also been trying to save the world as long as there has been a world, right?
yeah. Yeah.
So, yes, the world is going to keep spinning tomorrow. We're going to get up and we're going to keep trying to do our best for the kids that we serve. Every day, that is the mission when we wake up. And I get out of bed and that's my goal for the day is how can I help the kids today? So,
Yeah.
it is a very different kind of pressure. There is still a child privacy component to that that is a very significant portion of my thought process in the same way that privacy and regulation and fiscal responsibility were part of my mindset in the financial services sector. So different topics, but you bring the same gravity of understanding to it. Very different approaches, and yet you take them both very seriously, and so the mindset, if you are serious in one and serious in the other, both serve you. And that becomes a transferable part of your skill set.
Mm. That's great to hear because it means you can transition, make decisions in different career paths, but still use that learning in different industries. So, what were your key experiences or turning points that you believed have shaped your career? And I know we've spoken a little bit around the information around
Yeah.
what you've done, and but were there any things that really stood out for you in your career?
I was thinking about that in preparation for this, and I think I have to bring it down to three big events in my life. The first one is that after I had been a business analyst for a little while, I saw another role open up in a different area of the company that I was with. And I sat down with my boss and my mentor at the time to talk to him about whether or not it was viable. And he asked me a question. And he said, Tamara, it comes down to what your interest is in. Do you want to do daily firefighting? This is a problem, fix it now, and whatever is
Mm,
the next thing, right? Or do you want to be involved in a long term project that it's going to take a while to see it come to fruition? At that time, I was getting a little bored with projects that were lasting a year, 2 years. Sometimes this was in a waterfall environment. You would get
mm,
3/4 of the way through the project and then it would lose funding and all your work is gone, right? We've
mm,
been there. And I thought, I'd like to try the firefighting part of this for a while. They called that client relationship management. In the end, while the day to day tasks were somewhat different, that day to day firefighting also gave me additional skills that when I returned to business analysis have served me well. The
mm,
ability to triage, for example, and to say, this can wait. because we have a more important thing that has to be dealt with. The relationship management part of it and building relationships with your stakeholders, that part has served me well. The second thing that happened to me had to do with exploring the developer path. I said that I looked for Kansas City women, looked for and found Kansas City women in technology at a pivotal moment in my career where I felt like I had been at that company for too long, but I felt stagnant. And I didn't know anyone outside of the company was the key factor. I didn't know how to network. So I went to, and actually, my husband rather pushed me out the door to one of their networking events. And thank goodness he did. And
Mm,
because I found an extremely supportive, uplifting community of women in technology who helped me to rebuild my sense of self confidence and my sense of self worth, which enabled me to go look for another job, which led
mm,
to a different place, which led me to get re-involved with IBA. And that was the point at which I got my CBAP. And the third thing that happened is once I got involved with IIBA, by this time I was involved with both organizations. And I saw that our founder, Jennifer, was becoming a keynote speaker on the international circuit. And I'll be honest, it looked like a glamorous life. Ooh, I'm going to Berlin this week to go speak at a conference. Right. I've learned since that that's not as glamorous as it sounds in
mm.
general. But at the time, I thought, wow, international speaker life. That could be cool. How do I get
Mm,
started with that? You have to
mm,
get you have to speak publicly, which means somebody has to want to listen to you speak publicly, which means you're going to have to practice. So I started practicing at a very local meetup to a group of about 7 or 8 people in a coffee shop. And that turned into guest speaking at one of our local IIBA Kansas City chapter meetings,
mm.
which led to an introduction to the organizers of the Minneapolis Professional Development Day, which led to speaking gig after speaking gig. And here I am talking to you. So
So,
all three of those events had to happen in a sequence, and
mm,
each one of them has provided something key. One was professional development from a learning how to work with clients, learning how to juggle day-to-day needs versus long-term needs. And a second one was learning how to network and learning how
mm,
to find and build community. And the third one had to do with expanding my world outside of Kansas City. And my mechanism for doing that was public speaking. And it's been an amazing journey. I will also mention none of that would have been possible if my husband had not been completely supportive. He's been behind me this whole time. He's been my number one cheerleader. I fell in with a group of women who set out with the purpose of lifting one another up. It was not catty, it was not petty, it was not self serving. We are here for each other. That
yeah.
made a huge difference. And then the
Mm,
IIBA community gave me the opportunity to continue to foster that. It's not just a
mm.
woman thing, it's a professional thing.
Yeah.
We
Yeah.
find our professionals and we lift each other up.
Mm.
Then what is you're
That's
doing now?
I think it's really important, these messages around the confidence that you said. Building confidence doesn't happen overnight. And especially if you've had some history where maybe a project hasn't worked out the way it should work out, or maybe your perspective is different from somebody else's, and then you're having to toggle who's right, how do we navigate this, how do we negotiate what's the best option. Those
Hmm.
things can really weigh you down over time. And so I agree, having a network that really truly cares about how you can get the best you is really helpful. A lot of people who are new to IIBA or new to business analysis will ask questions like, how do I get a job? But as you point out, joining a network is an essential part of that process. It's not just getting a certification, applying, getting your CV ramped up. It's about understanding the environment that you're going to be working in and getting that support.
100%. Networking was not a skill that I learned until I was in my 40s,
Mm,
and much to my detriment. I am I go back and I think about points in my life that might have turned out differently. And I'm very grateful for where I am today. And I think how much sooner could I have gotten there? And where would I be had I backed everything up by at least 5 years, if not 8 to 10 years? I wouldn't have been ready when IIBA was a brand new organization and I was a baby BA. That wouldn't have been
yeah.
the right time for me yet. But a couple of years after that, getting involved and getting connected with people around me outside of where I was working at the time would have been very helpful. And
Mm,
I did not know. Sometimes when you're in a toxic work relationship with your employer, with your team, with your boss, whoever it is, and sometimes you don't.
mm,
And I had no idea what a toxic environment I was existing in until I got out of it and went somewhere else and discovered how vastly differently people could treat one another and how
yeah.
huge it I did not realize how much I needed to heal from that experience until after I left it.
Yeah.
And that made a big difference for me. And Kansas City Women in Technology gave me that space. And I also happened to find a job at the time where people actually valued my skills. And it helped me to emotionally heal, to regain my confidence, to think, oh, yes, I do have value. I actually
Yeah.
do know what I'm talking about. And that's when I realized, okay, I'm not going to let anybody define my self-worth again because
Mm,
I had not received enough validation of my self-worth. Not that I had a bad childhood, but I didn't grow up with a lot of validation of my worthiness. It was all couched in obedience and following the rules, right?
mm, mm,
Not being myself. And then in my early professional career, that toxic work relationship, all those things just grew in me. And it wasn't until I accidentally almost escaped that and discovered that a different world out there where people actually care about one another.
mm,
And that was the sea change for me. So now I make it my point to reach back and find those individuals who might be in that boat and reach out and bring them along. That's how we
mm.
pay it forward. And that's how we pay it back. We pay it back by bringing others along and bringing them out into the world.
Yeah. That's awesome. That is fantastic. How would you let's go a little bit to business analysis. And I can resonate with a lot of your experiences. So I understand that there's you telling your truth, which is amazing. But let's go back just a little bit to around the business analysis and
Sure.
what do you think is important in the field today? What if somebody's going into the field and they really want to, they're passionate about this, they've heard a lot about it, they're nervous, all of those kind of things. What would be important for that individual going into the field of business analysis?
Know what skill sets you're looking for because
Mm,
these days business analysis takes many forms and has many titles. And
mm,
I may not always agree with the direction that it's going. I am a business analyst at heart, and I'm a business analyst purist at heart. But the
mm,
reality of my life is that's not the direction that it's going. So,
mm,
as a professional, I have to be able to recognize the skill sets that resonate with me in business analysis in other roles, such as product owner, such as product manager, and bring those out and bring those skills to bear, no matter what title I have. And I have told my boss this on several occasions. I will always be a business analyst. You can change my title and you can change my day-to-day job responsibilities, but I think like a business analyst.
Mm,
So that is and that is a growth opportunity. That's incorporating additional skill sets
yeah,
into my professional portfolio without
because you
having to
have,
abandon something that I'm
yes,
passionate about.
as a BA, gives you so many opportunities to branch into multiple areas. So it really is really helpful, I suppose. Let's talk a little bit around your working with children and not working with children necessarily, but the purpose of working with children and Children International.
Yeah.
Can you tell us about maybe a project or initiative where you found that the role that you played was critical in helping them achieve particular outcomes? And were there any challenges that you saw?
Well, here's how I can describe my job. I am not on the front lines in Ecuador, in Colombia, in Bicol or Manila or Sahai or Delhi. I'm not on the front lines doing the good work of our staff who are there at our agencies. But the way that I can be of service is by helping them to be able to serve more kids. The way that I can do that is by helping to provide tools to them that help them do their jobs more efficiently, more easily, with less emotional and physical effort to get a thing done because they have enough challenges as it is. The tool that I am most proud of right now is a Microsoft Power Platform based tool that we call DigiCore. Now, to give you
Mm-hmm.
the idea for this, the quick rundown, pre-pandemic, we still had most of our sponsors physically writing letters to their children, delivering them by the
Mm,
United States Postal Service to our headquarters in Kansas City, where they were being redistributed and couriered to the local agencies, where the physical paper copies were being given to families because the families don't
mm,
have internet.
mm,
Pandemic comes. And not only is the United States shut down, but everyone else is too. And some countries, especially countries that we worked in, had much stricter quarantine conditions than we did. And our community centers simply could not function. So not only could our kids and families not come to the community centers to receive services, but our staff couldn't even get to the community centers to continue their work day to day. Very quickly, we found ourselves absolutely needing to find a way to keep our sponsors and their kids connected digitally, 100%. We'd been working towards that for a while already, but the pandemic accelerated that digital transformation to light speed. The way that we accomplished that was by building a Power Platform based application that allows our sponsors to write to their kids on the internet, because we here in the United States do have pretty reliable internet, and to
mm.
scan those letters and provide them digitally to the agencies. The agencies can retrieve them. Now we've eliminated courier costs, so there's a cost
Yeah.
savings there. We've eliminated time, so we can get the letters to the kids faster. And
Mm-hmm.
the agency staff who are now working from their homes can continue to
Mm-hmm.
work digitally from a browser.
Yeah.
Bonus, because all of that content is digital, we can deliver it to families by WhatsApp or by text in whatever way works for them. And for the families who do not have internet service and still need a delivery, we still have the capability of printing those letters off and delivering them to them by hand. But this allowed us to actually resume that almost immediately, that exchange of letters between sponsors and their kids. And now we are at a point where we are beginning to expand the capabilities of that tool into other capabilities within the organization. The beauty of Power Platform, and this is a topic for another day, but the beauty of Power Platform is that you can quickly stand up a very specific application for your use case and get something
Mm,
working in the field quickly to see if it's going to
yeah.
be the right thing, and then
Mm.
pivot just as quickly into something else if it's not the right thing.
It's
We're
truly
beginning to
agile, right?
leverage. It's very
Mm.
agile, and I'm really coming to appreciate the flexibility that offers us.
Mm.
Yeah, it's
So talk,
and that's how I can serve from the rear instead of being
yeah,
on the front lines.
I think that's great because technology is an enabler. We do, if it's used correctly, of course, but it is a great enabler. So maybe I'll go into a little bit around asking you for the next 5 to 10 years. And we know with the pandemic, right? We had to really work fast and we had to use the technology that we had. And knowing what you know from that experience, what do you think will happen in the next 5 to 10 years in the field of business analysis or product ownership or any of those careers? What are the trends that you see? And do you anticipate AI being part of that? Do you anticipate something else? Or what do you see in the toolkit?
I think it's pretty clear at this point that AI needs to be in the toolkit. It is the wave of the future, and the sooner you get on board with that and learn how to use it to your advantage, the better off you will be. I am
Mm,
still on that path. I am not the
mm,
earliest of early adopters, and I am working my way into it. I do think there will be a lot of use cases for business analysts in the AI sphere. There's still
mm,
a very wide range of opinions about the speed with which we should continue AI development, the ethics around AI development, the representation around
yeah,
AI development of people of color, of underrepresented populations, of cultural differences. For the United States, I might say our indigenous cultures versus a Western European mindset versus an, an Inuit culture or an Aboriginal culture, right? There are so many perspectives and ways of looking at life that are not being taken into account today. I do think that we as business analysts have a role to play in guiding the ethical development of AI in the long term. And the sooner that we
mm,
can find that entry point and help to influence that modeling in a way that is inclusive and unbiased, then the better off we will be. I
yeah,
do also think that there's the say in my world, in my job market at least, the business analysis boat has sailed. We are now
mm,
product owners, we are agile business analysts, we are product managers, we are many things, but they don't want to call us business analyst, generally speaking, in the Kansas City job market.
mhm,
There are other places where it's not as far. So that is why I come back to be adaptable. Look for the
yeah,
skill sets that you are good at and pay less attention to the job title than
yeah,
you do to the actual skills. Do you have the skills required to do this particular job? And if those
yeah,
skills are business analysis skills, critical thinking skills, then you may do well. So don't
mm,
limit yourself by thinking, oh, I'm only looking for a business analyst role, or I'm only going to look for an agile BA or a product owner role. Look for the skill sets, look for the
yeah.
keywords that they're using in the job descriptions, and then leverage
That's really
that.
good advice. Yeah, that's good advice because at the end of the day, when people are looking for a candidate to work in their organization, they're looking for someone who's going to solve a problem for them in some form. And so even if you've been a BA for a while or you think that's where you're going, a product owner can solve similar problems for a business and have particular focus areas.
And
So in your, yeah.
if I might go back for just a moment, there's something else that I wanted to put out in the world for thought.
Mm,
In my interactions with AI, I'm asking questions. And when
Yeah.
I get a ambiguous answer or an incorrect answer, I reframe the question. That's
Mm-hmm.
prompt engineering.
Yeah.
The longer I'm doing prompt engineering, the more I realize that I am playing the role of a stakeholder to a business analyst who is learning
Yes.
my requirements.
Yep.
And when I
This is where
reframe it
you
that
and I,
way,
we very much aligned with that because the term prompt engineering for me is just a requirements thing.
it is a
um,
requirements thing.
yeah,
And I think that there is a role to play for business analysts in the future in developing prompts.
yeah,
And look, I have been challenged recently by some of my mentors to think about that as a possible path for the future, that there may
mm,
be a role for someone who is a specialist in being able to get answers from AI. I
yeah,
hesitate to say prompt engineering by itself because I think it's going to be more than that, but that could be an area, that could be an emerging area to keep an eye on.
yeah. I will absolutely agree with you because asking the right questions, given the right instructions, those all lead to great outcomes. And essentially, as you know, the business analysis profession has really looked at understanding what's required to get an output. And so I'm in 100% agreement. That was going through when they used the term prompt engineering, I got scared about the technology. I was like, oh, do I have to do something special? And then you realize actually, no, it's an instruction which is similar to the principles we use in business analysis around how do you write a requirement. So I thought that's quite liberating, actually. That's quite exciting.
Yeah. I think we need to learn how to use AI as another tool in our tool belt. It is not a thing to be afraid of.
Yeah, I agree with you. People will always do things. Some people do great things, people won't do great things, but we shouldn't. I see it more as a equalizer for many of us in the field. If you have dyslexia or you have any of these other challenges, AI can certainly be a huge help for you to progress your career. And so I definitely see it as something we should be looking at. So, in your current role, what are the key challenges and opportunities you're working on? Do you have any insight that you could maybe share with the group?
The biggest initiative that I am working on right now has to do with a legacy transformation from our original client relationship management system into Dynamics 365.
Okay.
And coincidentally, it started the same week that the United States went into lockdown in 2020.
Oh, wow.
And here we are, almost
No
exactly
pressure.
4 years later,
Mm,
and we are nearing the end of that enormous initiative, and it has been a transformation. And I will
mm,
say that it has occupied 150% of my brain capacity for most of that time.
mm.
And I will be thrilled when we finally, I'm just going to say birth this baby because this has
Yeah.
been such an enormous effort. It has given me a very upfront and intimate view of large transformation projects. They often call it business process reengineering, and those tend to take place in very large organizations. And the statistics say if you haven't accomplished it within 18 to 24 months, that project is likely to fail. But here we are 4 years later, and I'm going to credit the fact that this is a nonprofit, and I think people are just wired differently in nonprofits. We have all been pushing for this throughout from in every level of the organization since the beginning. And now here we are near the end, and it will be
Mm.
great to see this come through.
What I like about that is it means that the business, the group, were really passionate about getting it done because often what happens is not everyone's passionate about the change that is occurring in the organization. So, did you find that was quite different from what you've experienced in other organizations, the passion for the change?
Yes, because in this particular role, I have change management has been a fundamental part of that process from the beginning. It's almost two parallel processes. There is a technological transformation and there is a mental transformation in the way that we organizationally must think of how we serve our children.
Yeah.
And processes that served us well in the 1980s no longer served us in the 1990s, but we didn't actually start fixing them until the 2010s. So
Yeah.
we were long overdue. And
Mm.
I say that we are wired differently in nonprofit, but I say that because from the very beginning, we all knew that the end of this effort was not to move from A to B. The end of this effort was to enable us to have the technological capacity and capability to scale our operations up and serve even more children. And where we were when we started, we could not have scaled much further
Yeah.
than we did. And this is going to give us the capability of growing, which in our case means being able to serve more kids in more communities all over the world.
Mm.
And we're
Mm.
that much closer to saving the world one child at a time. So it's much easier to keep that end when you start with that
Yeah.
end in mind. All of the bad days in between become meaningful. And oh my
Yeah.
gosh, there's bad days. There's so many bad days. But when you finally get there, it
Mm.
makes it all worth it.
Mm.
But that change
And then,
management has been quite the education.
and when you say the change management, do you mean like the methodology or just the mindset, or what do you mean around the change management? Because there must have been something that went right on that particular path.
All of it, beginning with collectively as an organization, from our person who operates our print machines in the print room to the chief operating officer. Why are we doing this? What is our why? Why is this necessary? And strong leadership from our CEO, Susanna, right from day one, knowing we were headed into a lockdown period and a stressful personal period for everyone through the pandemic. And her encouragement and she set the tone right from the beginning to say, this is going to be a long effort. This is what we stand to accomplish. But before we can get there, there's going to be a lot of difficult times ahead. Give one another grace. She flat out said that in the kickoff call, and that has been the tone that they took right from the beginning.
Mm.
Parallel to that, to give one another grace, that also means we have to be competent in communicating and in allowing space for learning. And that means, from a technological perspective, when we had a feature that was ready to be rolled out, we also had to think about how are we going to teach people how to use this?
Yeah.
And how are we going to get them excited about it? Why should they care about going to another training? How is this going to help them? It is variations on the themes of what's in it for end user, the what's in it for me mentality, and the we are all in this together. This is the end goal that we're trying to go to. And coming back and forth between we're all in this together and this is what's in it for you. And then supporting that with methodologies and artifacts and outputs that support that growth in the organization from beginning to end. That's another topic that I could squirrel on for hours. So it's been a really cool learning experience, and it has got me interested in learning more about change management from a professional
Mhm.
development standpoint now that I've had a front row seat to it.
It's wonderful. That has been a critical part of the success in the journey. that is really great news, because it can go horribly bad as well, where people are very resistant and they fatigued by all the change messages and those kind of things. So that is a wonderful success story in itself.
Right.
So I have one last question for you, which I always, well, actually, I have two questions for you. So, could you give some advice or lessons learned for professionals entering their career? Is there anything that you would spot out?
I would say, first of all, just to repeat myself, don't focus on the job title, focus on the skills. What are you good
Mm,
at? What would you like to be good at? Where can you contribute? And focus on that, and the job title will solve itself. The second is join a professional development organization. Maybe that's IIBA, maybe that's your local women in technology group, maybe that's your local chamber of commerce, maybe that's something different, but get out there. You
yeah.
cannot be hired as easily by people who don't know you. But on the
Mm,
other hand, if I go to my colleagues in Kansas City Women in Technology or in IBA, actually, let me flip this and say, because I have cultivated connections all over the world now, if I ever find myself in Brussels, for example, I have
mm,
people that I can look up. If I'm
mm,
ever in a position where I need to apply for a job in the UK or Canada, I know someone I can call who might be able to give me a bit of insight. Even better yet, if I find myself in need of a job because people know me, if they have a good opinion about me, they may be more
yeah.
willing to refer me to their employer or to their colleague or
Mm,
to someone else. But it is very difficult for for you to show up to one meeting once a year and then expect everyone to know who you are and how you operate and
mm,
about your professional integrity or your business skills or your personality. You have to be seen frequently and you have to get involved with your community so that your community can help you when the time comes. And I think that
mm,
leads to the third point and that is plan to give more than you take. When you network, it is very common for people to reach out and say, "Hey, could I connect with you? I think you might be the hiring manager in this company. Can you tell me how to apply or could you give me a referral?" No, because I don't know you.
yeah.
But on the other hand, if you go to that person and say, "I have a genuine interest in you. I have a genuine interest in your company. Can I ask you some additional questions about it?" In the way that you've asked me
Mm,
about Children
mm,
International, and learn that, get to know that person, and then develop that relationship. Then you have begun to cultivate a relationship that eventually can become an ask. But don't start with the ask.
yeah.
Give, and eventually you will receive dividends. So, but keep giving. And that is not the
That's
typical
really good
mindset.
advice. Yeah,
So,
that's really good advice because there are a lot of people who are willing to help where they can, but you also don't want to feel like you've just been taken advantage of for somebody who doesn't you, you don't know. That's not the best way to do it.
it's very
So,
tough to recommend someone that you don't know.
yeah. Um, so my last question to you is, and this is always a difficult one, if you could go back in time and give yourself one piece of advice at starting your career, what would it be?
Mm, network sooner. I would have told myself to get out there sooner, get to know people, to see and be seen by professionals, and especially for those who are shy or who feel inept at it, which most certainly did. That's hard.
Yeah.
That's hard. So if you
Mm,
can find one person who is willing to take you under wing and coach you through that, informally, formally, that's helpful. I would have told myself to learn how to network a lot sooner. And
mm,
that in itself would have enabled me to be involved with organizations like IIBA and in the other professional development organizations, and my career might be even farther than it is now.
Mm. That's good advice. And it is difficult if you introverted or shy or anything like that. It's not a natural thing to do. As you mentioned, the IIBA, there's some safety in it as well because you online a lot of the time you have your safe space and if you're having a bad day, you can choose not to join on that day. But if you
Yes.
are having a bad day, you could have a conversation with other people around those topics as well. Yeah, it
And
all adds
it
up.
is a process. Depending on the
Mm,
crowd, I can still find myself after all these years of networking and all the things that it appears that I have done, I can still walk into a room and feel completely out of my element. To not know what to talk to anyone about, to not know anyone in the room, and to feel like I am intruding on a conversation rather than introducing myself and becoming part of the flow. It's continuous. And even once you think that you've gotten okay at it, it takes practice your whole life.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I was chatting to somebody else, and he was saying that usually after big engagements, he goes and sleeps for a couple of hours. And that is actually something in our family. It's very true. It's exhausting, but it's necessary and it's rewarding as well. It's not just like you have to do it and you'll hate it forever. You'll get something from it, but it is something that requires
Yes.
effort if you don't do it naturally.
Yes. It is like an exercise regimen or convincing yourself to get good at a new hobby. You have to keep working at it. That's me and crochet. I'm not very good at it. I keep putting it down. But every few months I come back to it and I try it again a little bit. It's just don't give up on it. Keep coming
Mm,
back, keep trying, keep working at it, and give yourself some grace in the effort. And that's the important thing. That self-care, sleeping, you know, probably an introvert, someone who can be social up to a point and then they hit their wall.
that's it. Yeah.
As compared to
Yeah.
my husband, that's me. He's a total extrovert. I can go and go and then I'm done. And I'm like, okay,
Mhm.
I'm out of here. I think they call it an Irish goodbye, which is you just slip out the room without actually saying goodbye to anybody. I'm totally that person.
Mm.
Okay, I'm done. I'm just going to slip out before anybody notices.
Oh, that's funny.
Very few of us,
All
I think, are
right.
true extroverts.
I don't believe there are actually that many, and especially in our industry, especially when you have to work with a lot of people all the time. A lot of it comes with you can go and do the job and you can do it really well, but then your true nature eventually arrives when you go onto the couch and watch TV for several hours. Tamara, it's been wonderful having you here. I am super happy that you joined me in this session. I love the work that you do. I love the contribution and the sharing of who you are and how you can provide advice to other people. So thank you very much for doing that. If
Thank you for
anyone wants to
having me.
be wonderful, it's really been a refreshing conversation. So it's a little bit how do you add more into your workspace than just work itself. If anyone wants to get in touch with you, what is the best way in which to do this? Is it
I am.
LinkedIn? Is it specific?
You can find me on Facebook, but professionally, I prefer LinkedIn, and my
Mm,
picture is on my profile, so I should be easy
mm,
to spot. I'll be happy to share the link with you. I am I am completely open to connections, and please do feel free to reach out. And if it suits, I have a Calendly available, so I could schedule some short introductory conversations with individuals as well, because I believe in
That's
paying it forward. So.
that's perfect. Thank you so much. It's been wonderful having you here and meeting you today, and thanks for sharing.
Thank you very much